You may be wondering whether you have an accent in American English, or you may be wondering why you have an accent in American English and what can be done to sound more like people in North America. Well, today we're going to be talking about what are things that you could do to adjust that would give you a sound that would be more typical for an American English accent. Good morning, guys. Good evening. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Schwa Mill, your American English accent review show. You send us a couple files. We take a look at two of them every stream here on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, right around 7:30 a.m. New York. And to guide you in this process, there is me. Hi, my name is Geoff. It rhymes with breath. That is one of the four keys to a natural sound in American English, including placement, pitch, breath, and trying to weaken your consonant sounds in order to strengthen your vowel sounds. We got two more files for you today. Thank you to everyone who has sent it. If you would like to send in files of yourself speaking to potentially get reviewed on one of these streams, you can take a look at the video description where I have posted a link to a free Telegram group where our members are able to send us audio files. Saying hello to a couple of people hanging out with us. Ganshim is with us. Hello, Ganshim. And Ivan's with us, hanging out in Macau. Great to have you here as well. And if you're here too, well, hello. Two files again for us today. One of them is going to be taking a look at some breast stuff. One of them is looking at the word really, which has so many different ways of being pronounced, which can make it very, very fun. We also have a question that I want to remember to get to because I think it's going to be helpful for all of our discussions in things like that. So let's take a listen to our very first file and see what feedback we can give.
I really like it. Really? Really? Oh, really? Really?
Okay. I think in general these sound pretty good. Let's just talk about the word really for a moment to talk about why it can be a challenging word. So really has many different ways it could be pronounced that you're going to hear. The first is with a short I sound, or I for that first syllable, and then the second syllable is going to have an E sound. So it's going to sound like it's like A. Do you hear that vowel shift? It's like E. Notice also the pitch pattern, right? Because that E is going to be at a lower pitch in general because the stress is on the first syllable. So in general, that first syllable is going to be a little higher in pitch. In general, that first syllable is also going to be longer than the second syllable, again, because the first syllable is the stress syllable. We're talking about general tendencies. Okay, there's always exceptions. The other thing we want to consider with this first syllable is that this I sound, which I can make by pressing my tongue against the sides of my teeth. It's almost like biting into the sides of your tongue. It's like So it's not E, it's I. Okay. When this short I sound has an L that comes after it, I would treat the L with a dark L sound. You may be used to saying ill with the tip of your tongue up here. Ill. You can see my tongue kind of flickering back there. Ill. Okay, which is fine. But one of the things that may happen when you do that is you may be also raising the placement and blocking some breath. So you might end up with a sound that turns into like il, and things like that, which is not the same sound as L. Here, they're saying il, and L. Okay, so I would really recommend the second position, which would be more of a dark L position. The tip of my tongue right there is actually pressed down against the bottom of my mouth, and it sounds like L. Compare il, tongue high, il, tongue down, il, real. Okay, so I would recommend the lower position. And then you're finishing with an E sound. Your language has an E sound if you're watching this. It exists in almost every single language in the world. This E sound, again, has a lower placement with lots of breath coming through. Okay, so E. The problem that we see, if you speak a Slavic language, so my Russian speaking, Ukrainian speaking, and similar language groups, Polish speaking friends. Also, some Romance languages, so Spanish, Italian occasionally, and Mandarin speaking, Chinese dialects and languages. What often can happen is this E sound gets reduced to just an S. So really becomes really, really, like really lucky versus like really lucky. Okay, so we have to make sure that we're also getting that E sound at the end. The other way that you can pronounce this sound for the word really is you may hear people using an E sound instead of an I. So instead of saying really, you may hear people saying like really, really, really. It's like he's really tired. He's really, really. So notice if you use that E sound and you link it with the letter L, it's going to break a little bit. So it's going to be like eel, eel. It's like real, real, really, 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 really. So notice that the movement's a little bit different. Whereas like for really, it's two syllables, no breaking. Really, really, really almost becomes three syllables. It's like two and a half. It's almost more like mora, almost like Japanese a little bit. It's like really, really versus really, really. So those are the two ways to do it. Notice that for both of them, you need to have that E sound at the end. So let's go back to our original audio.
I really like it. Really? Really. Oh, really? Really, really.
Okay, and in general, so this kind of captures a lot of the different variations. I think these work. The one thing that I would pay attention to is make sure that you hold that final E sound long enough because some of them are a little bit short. So we're getting into that reduction territory I talked about, like like really versus really. I think you hear it a little bit in like that final way that really is pronounced.
I really like it. Really? Really. Oh, really? Really, really.
Like really, really versus really, really. I would just maybe just have a little bit of a crispier E sound on that. Okay, but overall, I think you can hear a lot of those different variations when you listen to people speaking in American English. So thank you for sending that file. And before we take a look at our next one, just want to highlight our sponsor for today. Sponsor's me. We have, in addition to the free Telegram group, that's how people send me files. Again, you can see it in the video description. There's a link that says the free Telegram group for the stream. Okay, and people can send me files and questions there. I check it once or twice a day. In addition to that, one of the issues with the stream is we look at two people's files and they may not be your files. But if you're like, hey, I want feedback for me every day, or sometimes I'm preparing for like a meeting or I have a class coming up and I need to talk, but I have a question about English and I don't know who to ask at random times. Or maybe you're just like, I want to practice some specific vowel sounds to get some feedback from an actual native speaker who also knows how to teach, because sometimes I ask my native speaking friends and they're just like, oh, I sound fine, or they don't give me real feedback. Okay, if any of these sorts of situations describes you, then the full Telegram group might be something that's helpful. It's currently $20 a month, and when you join, you pretty much get access to me at all times of the day. I'm checking it multiple times. You get a response from me within 24 hours. You can retry all the corrections that you make. So you send a file, I give you suggestions, you can redo it. And you can also send in files for any sounds or phrases or words that you're working on. And you'll get feedback and suggestions again within 24 hours. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you'd like to get feedback from me every single day of the week, I encourage you to visit fluentamerican.com/telegram. All right, I got another file for us to take a look at. Let's take a glance and see.
So, yes, we had that conversation, and we're hybridating our last name, and
Okay, so thank you for sending this file as well. Two things stand out to me. So it seems like we're concentrating a lot on breath and also perhaps to a degree on placement. The placement is feeling a little bit high. It feels like we're almost like top of throat, sometimes even getting into slightly nasally territory. So it's like, it's almost like if I were to kind of like talk like this. So it's like now I'm talking kind of top of my throat, back of my mouth. But like if I take one of these sounds and maybe try to move it down a couple times, let's pick a word here.
So, yes, we had that.
So that phrase, like, so yes, versus let's just try and move that down a couple times. Like, so yes, so yes, so yes, so yes, so yes. Just feels like our placement's a little bit high. So I would like to kind of see things moving down a bit. I think the bigger focus on this audio, though, is the breath. So let's just kind of listen to see what's happening breath-wise.
So, yes, we had that conversation. And, we're highlighting our last name. And,
What's up happening? So we have these pushes of breath, which is important, right? American English needs breath to, I think, really achieve the most natural sound. But they're almost coming in as like these like static hisses. Like it sounds like so we and things like that. So there's these moments where we're just kind of pushing a lot of air. And the way I describe it is that, when we're talking about breath in American English, it's not about like trying to force it out so heavy. It's we're not kicking you out of the house. We're not shoving you out the door. We're just opening the door and letting air kind of naturally move through. So I think some transition sorts of exercises. One exercise we mentioned in the previous stream was like imagine, like I call it like the train exercise. It's like imagine you're on the train platform and the train's about to pass, and then it passes you and then it's gone. Trying to kind of capture that sort of like slow fade in, fade out transition. So like, or like, so trying to smooth that out. So to give an example of a specific moment where we hear some of that kind of like hissing sound.
So, yes, we had that conversation. And,
You hear that like conversation, and so it's like kind of these heavy breaths after it. So instead of like conversation, or conversation, and instead of doing like we're like so it's kind of more fading out into the transition into the breath. Don't feel like you have to push the air out too heavy, because I think we're going a little bit too strong with that. See if anything else stands out from the audio.
So, yes, we had that conversation. And, we're highlighting our last name. And,
Okay. The other thing I'll say about this clip too is I don't think this is the focus of the audio, so I'm not going to harp on that too long. But the pitch, we're a little bit flat pitch wise, right? Everything is about this pitch range. I'm going back to everything here. So nothing's like ever going crazy high, but nothing's also ever going low. And this is also connected to what I mentioned about placement earlier as well. Because I think as we are able to tap into some of the lower pitches, we may be able to access some of the lower placements too. One final listen.
So, yes, we had that conversation. And, we're highlighting our last name. And,
One thing I will say is that because the vowel is so concentrated on breath, I think the consonant sounds are being reduced in a way that sounds really natural. So there's some words in here that can get really blocked off by the consonant sounds. Words like, for instance, like conversation, can become like conversation and like things like that. I like the space we're giving to vowels versus consonants. I think that's very solid. So continuing to work with breath, I think will be helpful. But I like that element of this a lot. All right, before we head out today, I do have a question that was sent in to us, I believe by Elisa. So thank you so much for sharing it here. Elisa asked us the question: is there a difference between a lower pitch and lower placement? Listen to most videos about placement and pitch, and to me, they are somewhat similar. Yes. Okay. So I think the key thing to think about with this is that placement and pitch aren't referring to the same thing. They're different concepts, but they are related to each other. Placement refers to where is it that you're projecting sound from. Saying, for instance, right now my placement's by my nose. I'm projecting here. Right now my placement's by my lips. I'm projecting here. Right now my placement's kind of top of my throat, back of my mouth. And right now my placement's a little bit lower, closer to where I naturally talk. Okay. Pitch refers to frequency of sound. It's like the sound waves and things like that. And so, for instance, like there are lower pitches, there are higher pitches, and things like that. In general, if I'm projecting from a lower position in my body, that's also going to be the place where lower pitches are produced and Conversely, when I raise the placement, this is the place where higher pitches are produced. So just some things to kind of think about there. Placement and pitch are not the same thing, but they are related to each other. They're just separate concepts. In general, if you use a lower placement, you will have lower pitches. In general, if you use a higher placement, you're going to end up with higher pitches. A note from Ivan: when I was in Toronto, a lot of American friends talked to them a lot. Tendency was to match their flow and speed, which broke my posture and made me sound less American. You know, I think a lot of times when we listen to, I think in any language, there's maybe this speaks to your own journey. Something that I know speaks to mine, and something that I've seen with a lot of students is that when we're learning a second language, we associate native speakers with speed and talking fast. And so we just try to talk faster and be like, this will make me sound more natural. It's interesting, for instance, on the IELTS test, when I was an examiner for the speaking portion of the test, one of the grading criteria is fluency. And if you talk too fast, that will actually lower your score. Your fluency score will not go past a band 6. Okay. So I don't want us to confuse fluency with speed. It's important to mix speeds up. But I think when we listen to native speakers talk, like they talk so fast, I don't think they're actually talking as fast as we think they are. What they're probably doing is they're linking a lot more with breath. They're weakening their consonant sounds. They're using a wider amount of contractions and reductions. And the result from a listener's perspective is, oh, wow, this is fast. We've talked before about how American English is a stress time language, that it's not syllable timed, and that has a huge impact on the language. So it's not that native speakers are just talking fast. It's that they're doing all these other things, reducing, removing, weakening consonant sounds, things like that, that we perceive it as speed. So it's not just that you're trying to say a word faster. It's about, can you incorporate these other elements? And then if you're able to do that, then the result is going to be speech that sounds faster. So I think that makes a lot of sense. See, ya, just hanging out with us. What's up, sir? Do you think accent is about intonation or placement? Yes. I do. It's all these things. Like, how are we going to separate them? If you have the wrong intonation patterns, but a solid placement, you're not going to sound natural. Conversely, if you don't have the right intonation patterns, but you have the right placement, that's also not going to be enough either. Okay, like when I'm teaching the concepts like placement, pitch or contrast, breath, and weakening consonant sounds, it's not a hierarchy. Some people hear the 4 and they're like, oh, well, first you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this. It doesn't work like that. They're all connected to each other. When I use a lower placement, that's also going to, in general, lower the pitch range I'm using. And to add that resonance, I'm going to need to add breath. And to keep that breath flowing, I'm going to need to weaken my consonant sounds and, strengthen my vowel sounds. So everything's really connected. You can't really tease them apart. All these things are important. Intonation patterns are certainly worth studying. A lot of people are struggling with all the intonation patterns. Like I mentioned it before, English is not a tonal language, but it has a lot of tones. It has more tones than Mandarin does. But because there's just so many waivers and things like that aren't incorporated in a lot of other languages. It doesn't have a lot of like high flat tones, but it does like what, like like what, like when people are kind of like surprised. It's not frequent tone. There's not a lot of flat tones in English, but it does have a rising like this. It's a falling intonation. This it has waivers like this. It's waivers opposite direction. This, and then you can stack waivers like this, and things like that. There's lots of different tones that are possible. So we want to be kind of considering that. Intonation is a very important thing. All right. I believe that kind of wraps us up for today. I will be back on Monday, though. I mean, on Monday. Well, I will be back on Monday, but I'll be back on Friday at 7:30 a.m. with another edition of the Schwa Mill. Thanks for hanging out with me. There's a lot of pronunciation resources out there, so the fact that you are here is greatly appreciated. Also want to just give a quick shout out to our shadowing channel. So if you're trying to get some shadowing practice in, or just listening practice, I posted a new video yesterday that you might like. You can find it over at youtube.com/@fluent American Shadowing. Have fun. I will see you guys later. I hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good night and a good afternoon. Take care.